And greetings, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Want to remind everybody, hit that like, share, and subscribe button. There's a PayPal link down there for anybody that wants to share some love. Every little bit is appreciated. And, of course, the StreamYard link is down there. Oh, maybe I haven't posted that yet. Let me post that real quick. So anybody that wants to join the panel can join the panel tonight. And there you go. And we're talking about the Creed of Freedom from G. Edward Griffin, the same guy that brought you the creature from Jekyll Island about the Federal Reserve. But before we get started, you'll notice I played the little bit there with Philip Zimbardo and the Stanford Prison Project. Well, he now runs the Heroic Imagination Project. And so I'm going to drop the link for that for everybody to check out. And this is what we're looking at. Philip Zimbardo that did the Stanford Prison Project and decided that there was a better way. That's him there. And so he came up with the Heroic Imagination Project and runs that to this day. And it's to instill that heroic imagination and project it outwards, doing the good deeds and this and that. And so there's that. And let me drop that link. And so I play that little bit with the Heroic Imagination Project. at the beginning of all the insanity clips that we review, the Kens and Karens and the police asserting their obscene authorities and such. And so I use that to try to help people comprehend what we need to do in spite of that sanity. And today, like I said, we're going to talk about the Creed of Freedom from G. Edward Griffin. So let's go back and take a look at that. And this is the home page called Freedom Force International. Freedom Force Internationals. International. And it says Impotentes Defender Libertatum Non Possunt. And what that means is right here, it says, those without power cannot defend freedom. Okay. Those without power cannot defend freedom. Remember, this is the same guy that brought you the creature from Jekyll Island exposing the Federal Reserve and how it's organized and what its true intent is. And it says visitors should start here. The first public presentation of Freedom Force, 2006, June 11th. History in the making. Now, this is the same guy that brings you the Red Pill Expo. Okay. And I don't know if this is still ongoing where he does these meetups, this Freedom Force International Third Congress. Notice he calls it a Congress. Okay. Same thing I've expressed with the Postal Congress. It's merely a meeting. People get together and congress together. They ingress and egress. It's a communication type egress. English language is a vehicular language. So it says, history in the making. There have been many proposals for ways to reverse the global tide of collectivism. Jack Talcott would love this, I'm sure. But none have worked. In this address, G. Edward Griffin explains why. The reason is so simple, it will astound you. Once we clear away that single barrier, the plan for a counter force falls quickly into place. 67 minutes that will reveal an idea whose time has come. An idea whose time has come. Your life and liberty depend on it. It's a 67-minute video that he put out, and we're not going to review it today. I'm just going over the site here today, and this will be a series of videos that I do in the end then. Because this is a lot of material, of course, and it needs some going over and reviewing, I think, particularly since, like I said, he's the guy that gave you the Federal Reserve, Red Pill Expo. He's got a lot of knowledge, and he's obviously doing things for the right cause. Now, why they haven't done anything to the guy yet, I have no idea, but that usually seems the way things go. Says, now let's go deeper. The following presentation was delivered on December 13, 2016, 10 years after the one above, at the Third Freedom Force Congress in Phoenix, Arizona. It's an extension of the topic of political power that was touched upon in the 2016 presentation, but here it is more fully developed. It is called This Thing Called Power. That's this one here, this thing called power. G. Edward Griffin, Freedom Force, Impotentes Defender Libertatum Non Possunt. And it's the essential for understanding the Freedom Force motto. Those without power cannot defend freedom. Organizational structure. It would be foolish to think that Freedom Force will be forever ignored by the forces of collectivism. When we arrive at a point where the powers that be think we have the potential to become a genuine threat to their plans, they will have no choice but to come after us. The formula for destroying their opposition is well known. The first phase is to monitor progress, but do nothing. In most cases, action is not necessary simply because their opponents will leave the arena entirely on their own. Understand that. If you just don't join in the fight, then the opponent becomes an opponent no more. They have no power. Usually they are lone individuals with no organized following, no financial resources, and no access to the media. They have no power. After they flash in the pan, they are soon forgotten. Demonetization by media. If someone manages to attract a growing following and enough financial support to sustain an organization, phase 2 begins. Demonetization by media. Stories will appear everywhere at once, condemning the victim for tax evasion, drug abuse, sex offenses, infidelity, racism, smuggling, terrorism, or hate crimes, to name just a few. There may be just enough fact in the stories to make them credible, but often there is no truth in them at all. That makes no difference, however, because the public will believe the stories anyway. Are you guys going to continue believing the stories? Once an individual is dragged through the media in this fashion, public support usually withers away. Carrot and stick. If this ploy should not work, phase 3 comes into play. Large sums of money, offers of lucrative employment, and zero-risk investments are hard to turn down. If victims have a dark event in their past, blackmail can be thrown into the mix. The threat of harm to loved ones is standard. This combination of carrot and stick is highly effective. And that one's got a continuation. We could continue on, but we're not. Like I said, we're just going to do a quick review on this tonight. And it's going to be a series where we're going to start watching some of these videos and going into the different details of the site. Strategy. Don't go into battle without one. Originally published 2017, 12/28. Updated 9/6 of 2018. Introduction. What you are about to read is one of the 3 most important documents relating to the heart and soul of Freedom Force. A second document is the Chasm, which explains the core principles that all members hold in common as the foundation of our brotherhood. A third document is about the unique organizational structure that hardens our movement against infiltration from outside and corruption from inside. Interesting. I'd like to know this structure. Strategy is the topic of this document, and it is the secret sauce of Freedom Force. Because this is a long document, here's an overview of topics to give you a reader's roadmap of what lies ahead. If you are interested in participating in Freedom Force, this is essential information. Why Freedom Force focuses on principles instead of issues. The need to be proactive with positive goals instead of defending the status quo. How a small group can influence the social and political policies of an entire nation. The necessity for full disclosure when using a strategy called rings within rings. Project Red Pill as the embodiment of that strategy. Like I mentioned, he's the one that brings you the Project Red Pill. Creating allies among people who do not yet understand the totality of the conflict between collectivism individualism. The challenge of creating unity without conformity. One principle that can become common cause for the entire liberty movement. What is meant by don't fight City Hall when you can be City Hall. I mentioned this to Jack tonight on his pod or on his stream, that if we're not satisfied with these political leaders, that maybe we should find people that can replace them, that are good quality people that will not be corrupt and allow the corruption to pervade it. Don't fight City Hall when you can be City Hall. Start becoming proactive. A look into the future at a hypothetical political party called Born Free. Interesting. Cause versus symptoms. Freedom forces differ from all other organizations dedicated to liberty. Most groups seeking to bring about positive change in society are issue-oriented. Political parties, for example, have platforms praising or condemning specific political agendas, and then they seek voter support for those platforms. Educational groups increase public awareness of current events and historical trends in hopes that this knowledge will translate into political or social change. In both cases, the focus is on issues. We should do this. We must oppose that. Positive social and political change would be impossible without endeavors of this kind. The problem, however, is that a single organization cannot champion more than one or two issues at a time. Furthermore, even in cases where issue-related victories are won on the political front, they are short-lived. See, they become political and socialized, and it's impossible without those. So it's kind of like a paradox. Furthermore, even in cases where issue-related victories are won on the political front, they are short-lived. The same challenges return again, and a large part of that is because they're merely just social platforms. You know, the fashions and things that come and go. Over history, things will fade away when it comes to things like the transgender and trans movement. I'm sure something will cause a sway in that balance again, and it will go back to the way of nature. I am sure of it. The same challenges return again and again at every election until eventually the super state wins. That's because the cause of these problems remains. This is where they decided that they were going to legislate out the use of plastic straws. And so they took it to full session and everything, spent all this time debating and everything, and had all these news articles on it. And see, yep, we're going to do away with plastic straws and paper wraps. So now we're going to use paper straws and plastic wraps. Therefore, ignoring the actual issue of the plastic being used to begin with, let alone the other plastics that you use along with it, specifically the plastic cup and plastic lid that you shove the plastic straw in. So you're not necessarily addressing the problem and fixing it. You're just addressing an issue, and it doesn't matter if it's fixed or not, particularly if you don't really fix it, because then you get to address that issue again. It's redundancy. That's the main portion of how government is too big. Even when we have temporary victories. The cause of these problems is that the power centers of society remain in the hands of collectivists. The super state wins. Why? Because they're the collectivists, don't you think? Aren't they the ones that pose that property ownership is vested in the state? They're telling you right out front. And as long as that condition remains, we can never succeed in the long run. Focusing only on issues is treating the symptom while ignoring the cause. The purely defensive is defeat on the installment plan. We've been like firefighters trying to put out hundreds of fires set by an insane arsonist. We run here and there, back and forth with hoses and buckets, fighting one fire after another, but there are more than we can count. Five new fires are started for each one we put out, and we constantly lose ground while our beautiful city is destroyed. We will never make headway until we find the arsonist and put him out of business. Any effort that ignores the cause of the fires is doomed to failure. Mission statement, short form. Our mission is twofold. One, to discover the lessons of history that reveal the social and political principles that are foundational to liberty, and to execute strategies that will embed those principles into the social mores and political codes of our respective cultures. Seems to me like he's agreeing with me that the true benefit is the knowledge, and therefore our people are destroyed by lack of knowledge. Therefore, the true remedy is the knowledge. And it's not the knowledge of the issue, it's the knowledge of the cause. That way you can execute the strategies to fix them. The long form, the mission of Freedom Force International is to build a coalition of men and women from all parts of the world and all walks of life who are concerned over loss of liberty and growth of government power. In response to this concern, we are willing to devote a major portion of our lives and resources to reverse that trend. To build such a coalition requires unity without conformity, diversity without conflict, and power without coercion, and a statement of principles that bind us together despite our many differences. Those principles are stated in the Creed of Freedom and the Code of Conduct. Together, they are the ideological and ethical gyroscope that guides us in everything we do, and they allow us to stand firm against all the political nostrums of our day and far into the future. It's imperative that we understand not just educating ourselves, but passing this education on to our younger generations. The forces against liberty are global. They exist in all nations and prey upon all humanity. Therefore, our mission also must be global and pursued by men and women of goodwill in all nations, religions, and lifestyles. Interesting. Our relationship with others is not based on their group identity, but their personal identity, which means their individual beliefs, actions, and character. Their person. That's why it's called a personal identification. The personification, the characters, the character traits that are distinctly different from everybody else. They carry a totally different form of communication. This precludes us from criticizing anyone based on race, religion, ethnicity, class, or membership in an organization. This also precludes favoritism on behalf of group identity, including religion. Our coalition is open to those of any theology, so long as they personally honor the Creed of Freedom and the Code of Conduct. That and only that is our common cause. Most members of the coalition also belong to patriotic organizations and churches that exist specifically for advancing national and theological ideals, and we salute them in that endeavor. In fact, all of those groups are welcome in our coalition, not with the expectation of convincing everyone else to pledge loyalty to their nation or religious doctrine, but to build strength through numbers and to institutionalize the principles in the Creed and the Code. We may differ on many things, but when we enter the coalition's ideological tent of individualism and liberty, we are united as brothers and sisters on behalf of the mission of Freedom Force. All successful theological and ideological movements in history have been based on this principle of single focus. And I think he's probably pretty accurate there. I haven't really studied this part of it so much, but I would bet that most of them would have to believe the same thing, because even in the scriptures of the Christian theology, it talks about the Gentiles who have not the law, do by their nature what the law says without knowing the law, are a law unto themselves. So it's a base principle that is embedded in the spiritual nature of every nation and its cultures. And that comes from its very people and its spiritual essence to begin with. In my opinion, of course. That includes not only the major religions of the world, but the two main branches of collectivism, communism and fascism. Would not have spread around the world without Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto and Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf, aided by highly efficient organizational direction. So he's explaining how powerful things move when you are organized about it. And that organized means you work towards the same goal because you have that same goal automatically. But somehow those nationalities and religions somehow seem to get us divisive. Unfortunately, no such movements have ever focused on liberty except in general terms, and with intent to simply replace the bad guys with good guys, not to change the storyline, but merely to replace the characters in the story. This is why history repeats itself. It could be argued that the Magna Carta and the U.S. Constitution were prior examples of an attempt to change the system. However, although the Magna Carta was the first written constitution in Europe, and although it did put a few restraints on King John of England, it was all about the right of the barons, not the peasants who had no more liberty afterward than before. The document was an agreement between those in power and was never intended to be the blueprint for a popular movement beyond the ruling elite. Likewise, the U.S. Constitution was the founding document of a political entity, a federation of 13 independent governments, former colonies, for their mutual defense and a few enumerated functions for their common benefit. It was not the foundation of a movement that would function outside the state as a teacher and a watchdog. And everybody's been indoctrinated in that right there. You've been indoctrinated into the state. A teacher to, let's see here. It was not the foundation of a movement that would function outside the state as a teacher and a watchdog. A teacher to explain and popularize the principles of liberty. A watchdog outside the state to guard against corruption and subversion within the state. Absolutely not. Just like your public education system does not teach you what you need to know. It teaches you simple basics to allow you to think you know well enough, and you don't. There is no evidence that this concept has ever been applied to the charter of any political regime in history, but that is precisely the goal of the movement we are building. Furthermore, the great turmoil and awakening of our day has created the conditions to actually make it happen. As Victor Hugo phrased it, more powerful than the tread of mighty armies is the idea whose time has come. And the idea here is the power is in the people. This thing called power, and how things are enumerated, that even in the Constitution, it tells you about the power of the people. That 9th Amendment, and how the Constitution doesn't fully enumerate the rights of the people. And then the 10th Amendment, wherein the powers that are delegated to the United States Constitution and neither prohibited by it are therefore delegated to the states or the people, respectively. Now, the people forget that the people are the ones that actually delegate any powers to any political entity or social body, either way. Commercial body, banking body, legal body. It's the people that give them the authority. It's the people that have to understand your power in that authority. And you either work with it and learn how to make sure that it works for you, for your benefit, as one of the creators of it, by learning how it works. Or you learn how it works and you work another way, but you can't work against it. It's there for a reason. The law is made for the lawless, and we know there's plenty of lawless people. So we have to do much better. It says, when you are ready to join with us in this epic undertaking, the adventure starts here. redpilluniversity.org. Join. Unity with conformity, diversity without conflict, power without coercion. Interesting. Interesting. And so the Creed of Freedom is what we'll go over next time. Creed of Freedom, page 2, Freedom Force International. Thanks for joining me, folks. I wish people would have come up on panel to discuss it, but hey, maybe next time. So remember, Heroic Imagination Project, and I'll go ahead and drop this link for everybody else. You go ahead and check it out in the meantime, so that when I get ready to do the next video, maybe I'll have some people that have already looked at it and want to join the panel. But like it says, if you don't even know your rights, how can you stand for them? The defender of freedom can't do it without the power to do so. That's where you get your power, is the knowledge of what your freedoms are. What gives you authority in life? Is it another man and some shit written down on a piece of paper? If so, what are the conditions of it? What are the personal character traits that you must portray in that indenture of being in servitude with another man? Because that's truly what it is, and you have to admit it. It's a contract. That's what servitude is. And if you're saying you did it voluntarily, then you better know the terms and conditions. Because if you're claiming something you're not, and using an identification, claiming that, that's a 3-year sentence according to their code. Just saying. In the United States. Anyway, it comes down to that thing about identity and knowing thyself. And you're not going to know your freedoms unless you know yourself. Can't stand up for yourself if you don't know yourself. So think about this stuff, folks. And like I said, next time I'll bring the Creed of Freedom, and we'll go over that. And hopefully we'll have some people on panel. In the meantime, you know me. Hit that like, share, and subscribe button. There's a PayPal link down there for anybody who wants to share some love. Always appreciated. And you know I love you. But I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back. I don't care if you hate me. I don't care if you don't respect me. That's on you. So may God bless you and have a good night. We'll see everybody next time.